Greetings, ladies and gents, and welcome to this latest edition of RE036, where I take old stories and update them to modern audio standards. If you enjoyed this sort of content, I would be honored if you hit the subscribe and like buttons. More importantly, let's head on to the story. It's called Aquila, written by RegalLegalEagle. They chant. They always chant. Do they know what they chant? Do they think it's my name, my title? Of course, it does not matter. None of what they do matters. All that matters is that what I shall do once they open the door. How many times is this now? I have long since lost count. Not that the darkness they leave me in gives me much sense of passage of time. Now, I simply know that 4 ages have passed since I came here. That I was brought here. The first age was that of the monks, or I took them to be monks. Shaved heads, orange robes, strange people of small stature. They knew not my tongue, and I knew not theirs. But still, they taught me much. I mistook their stature for weakness, and was taught the error of my mistakes quickly. They knew much about the form of body and spirit. To turn one's body into a weapon, fist and foot could strike as hard as iron. Their dedication to this was worthy of my respect and my attention. But they would not follow my own attempts to teach them and soon fell. Flesh, as strong as iron, is still flesh, and that which we fight can rend it easily. All too soon, I was left alone in the darkness once more. The second age, that of the Northmen, I recognized their hair from the campaigns against the Celtic tribes, but these were different, more organized, more advanced. Their round shields and mail were nothing compared to my own equipment, of course, but they were still impressive in their own way. The axes they wielded showed much thought. Long handle, small head, a precise weapon for striking. They showed me the intensity of their ferocity, how to turn one's hatred and anger into a tangible weapon. To strike fear into one's opponent and drive them before you, lest they face your wrath. But once more, they refused to temper their own skills with what I tried to teach them. As brave and ferocious as they were, they became blinded by their fights, pushing themselves into a never-ending tide of foes. Again, I waited in darkness. The third age was those of the swordsmen. I had no other word for them. They wore painted and colorful armor, but their focus was their swords, which were incredibly strong. To each of them, their sword was clearly a part of them, an extension of their being as much as their arms and legs. They showed a clear dedication towards perfecting their technique as a form of art as much as a matter of martial prowess. Though I did not favor their longswords, they did teach me the importance of practicing with every weapon I could until I too was comfortable with it as an extension of my being as my limbs. But this, combined with their rigid code of honor, was also their downfall. I could not teach them that a weapon is still a tool and must be abandoned in battle from time to time. Nor could I make them understand our foes care not for honor or strict rules of combat, and that neither should they. One by one, they fell, and soon I was left with memories of the colorful armor to keep me company in the dark. The fourth age was that of feathers. I could not think of a better way to think of these men who came also in colorful clothes, but bore no armor. They used swords thinner and lighter than I'd ever thought possible, the feathers pluming their hats, all that truly seemed to unite them in my eyes. They showed a fluidity of movement in combat that showed the value of finesse. Hacking at one's opponent as hard and forcefully as you can only counts for so much when you can pierce and cut where it will do the most damage. They showed me how they could turn aside their body to dodge attacks rather than let their armor turn aside the blade or claw. They were capable of drawing many cheers from the crowds with their skill and swordsmanship. But once more, they were undone by their strength. There are those foes that cannot be dodged, those who cheered for the ability to kill, cheered just as loud for their ability to die. Yet again, I was left in the darkness. There'll be another age soon. Of this, I am certain. There will always be more ages. What is unclear is if I will live to see the next age, or if I'll finally die here. But I am confident in my abilities, as only one of my kind can be. I have learned from every age. I have the greatest skill of all of them. I adapt. I take what I can use and leave behind what I cannot from each culture I meet. My armor will turn aside the blades and claws I cannot dodge. My weapons are an extension of my will and my body. But if I must, I'll let them go. My ferocity shall be always tempered with restraint. There is no shame in retreat on the field if it gains me the strength and time. My body itself is a weapon honed by combat, meditation, and practice. There is no weapon I will not use. There is no tactic I will not employ. There is no foe I cannot overcome. The chant is growing louder. My time to venture from the darkness and into the light is upon me yet again. Today I might fall. But no matter what, I will ensure that if today is the day Mars will deliver me from this place and into the fields of Elysium, then I shall give him a tribute worth his armor. I will bathe the arena in blood and the bodies of those who seek to strike me down. I will inflict upon them a debt of death that they will not forget or recover from lightly. And I will show them that overwhelming odds means nothing to me. I'll do all this and more. I approach the door. I can see the rays of light trying to seep inside, even now, as they keep chanting, Aquila, Aquila, Aquila. I glance up at the standard held in my right hand. Even in the faint glimmer of light, I can see the glint of gold. The bird above me gives me its strength, even if I feel it watching me, judging the performance I am about to begin. The battle I am about to wage shall fall under his watchful eye. They are not just the eyes of an eagle. They are the eyes of Rome itself, of Mars. I care not for the chanting crowds outside this door. I am judged by those worthy of my service, and they will not find me wanting. The door opens, and even as my eyes strain against the sudden wave of light washing over me, I move forward. I can hear the cheers of the strange and twisted creatures in the stands around the arena. I can hear them hiss and gurgle in their inhuman tongues. Delight, fear, hope, hate. I know not, and I don't care. I drive the standard into the ground at my feet once I am near the center of the arena, which causes another roar of cheers. This is where I make my stand. This is where I always make my stand. If I fall, I shall fall beneath the standard. I am a Praetorian. I am the power of the empire. I am the embodiment of the Senate and people of Rome. As I stand here, I realize that there is in fact a fifth age, an age that has never ended, the age of Mars. Am I not a worthy tribute to me? Have I not proven in this arena, littered with dead of the past ages, that I'm truly his son? If so, why has he not delivered me from this place? I've seen the stars closer than I've ever dreamed possible as a child from the windows of this strange place. If this is not Elysium or Hades, then I am far from my home. Perhaps one day I will tire of this life, moving from darkness to light and back to darkness again and again, to show my worth in combat, to fight for my life without end. Perhaps one day I will simply give them my life to end this constant struggle. But that day is not here yet, and if they want my life, it'll cost them dearly. I hear the drums then. I don't know if they intend it, but I always thought they prayed for me. The heavy thump of the drums is supposed to portend the arrival of my foes this day, perhaps to strike fear into me. But it never works. Instead, I bring from it strength. I listen to the beat of the drums and think of my fallen friends and comrades. I do not hear my doom. I do not hear my foe, for I know what the war drum really is. It is simply a louder beating human heart. I hear the roar just as the doors to my right open. These are not creatures I have faced before, but that matters not, for I don't need to know what they are to kill them just as well. They are three, standing a head and shoulders taller than me. They are covered in a thick, dark, shaggy fur and stand as men, but with faces and horns more like those of rams. Even as they see me, I've drawn my first pilum and leap forward, twisting my body as I throw it forward. Even as I watch it fly true, I'm drawing the second, twisting my body in preparation for the next throw, as the first pilum sinks into the first creature's throat. The blood that seeps out is as red as my own, and it clutches the weapon, piercing its throat and neck, even as it collapses. The other two roar, but I'm throwing the second even now. This time, it sinks into the upper thigh of the one to the right, who bellows in pain and collapses as the leg buckles from the wound. I watch the third begin to charge at me, bellowing as it lowers its head, twisted, coiled horns bearing down on me. I raise my scootin, then hiding most of my body behind it, and just peeking out over the edge, while I use my right to quickly draw my gladius. This creature wants to charge, and I want to give it a target. I wait for it to bear down on me, close enough for me to smell the rancid breath billowing from its nostrils before I twist and turn, spinning away from my position to draw myself, my scutum out of its charging path. I can see the surprise in its eyes as it tries to change course, but it's too late. As it rushes past, I lash out, driving my blade through the thigh and calf of the creature. The red blood that gushes out to stain my gladius and spray up my arm will not be the last blood I shed today. Even as the creature howls and tumbles forward, head driving into the dirt of the arena, as it slides away from me, I follow. I can see the fear in those animalistic eyes staring up at me while I approach. It is reaching for me weakly, just before I stomp my sandal onto its face, covering its sight as I drive my blade deep and then out of the creature's throat in a swift and clean movement. When I turn, I can see the last has broken the pilum shaft from the head, which is bent and buried in the upper thigh. It bellows at me from across the arena, wasting energy and breath, for I am not intimidated. I draw my scutum close and hold my gladius at the ready as I watch. It begins to limp towards me as I can see it is not deterred by the wound. Admirable, but foolish. I bide my time as it approaches. Based on the muscles bulging beneath the fur along the arms and torso, I know this creature will be a threat up close, but I have no more pilums to use on it. I hold my scutum up there, keeping it between me and the creature as I approach. It roars and bellows, wasting more energy and breath, trying to scare or intimidate me, and still, it does not work. When I get close, I dash forward and slam my shield into the creature, then jump back as it swings and hits nothing but air that I just inhabited. I repeat this twice, each time slamming my shield into the creature's torso and fists as it tries to strike. But it is not focused on hitting me. It is trying to hit my scutum. Finally, my tactics pay off as it roars in anger and grabs at my scutum with both hands. This is the opening I've been waiting for. As it tries to wrestle my shield off my arm, I drive my gladius up and under its arm, shoving it in with all my strength into the creature's torso. It lets out a howl and releases my scutum as it falls, but I cannot draw my gladius from it in time, and I must let it go. It twitches on the ground before me, desperately trying to pull the sword out of its armpit, but it cannot reach, and the creature's red blood seeps onto the arena floor, beginning to turn the soil to mud. Finally, the light drains from its eyes, and it lies still. I let my sandal on its side and start to jerk the blade free. But then I hear a screech from the next set of doors. Even as I started to free my sword from the creature's body, I let go and jump away from where I was. A glob of green pile is hurled past where I was, hissing and bubbling as it hits the ground next to me. I look over to see a creature that I've dealt with before. I call it the bile scarab, as that is what it seems to be to me. It has a black hard shell with a sickly green pattern etched across the surface, either naturally or by design. I don't know which is the answer, and I don't care. Behind it are 3 skinny grey creatures that drive it forward with pokes and prods from their light spears. I call them shepherds. Leaving my gladius behind, I begin to run forward, even as the scarab quivers and hisses before opening its maw to hurl out another glob of that burning green bile. I am not simply running without purpose, though. I have a goal. As I rush forward, I lean to the side and roll past the long-since-picked clean skeleton of one of the Northmen. When I rise, one of their long-shafted axes are in my hand, and the shepherds are barking and squeaking at one another in their tongue, poking at the scarab to drive it forwards. Have they not seen how I've dealt with their kind before? I start to run once more, but this time straight towards the shepherds and their war beast. It chitters and hisses, but the globs of bile are little threat to me now that I am facing it head on. I can see them coming and have little trouble changing my route from the side to side to avoid the bile. Even as the shepherds try to jab it forward with their spears, it begins to back up, more afraid of me than them. It is the only intelligence it shows before I swing the axe over my head, letting the blade cut straight through the scarab's head and, most importantly, the bile sac along its throat. I don't stop swinging and raise the axe over my head once more, aiming to fling the bile now clinging to it at the shepherds. Smaller globs of bile fly from the blade, splattering onto two of the shepherds, making them squeal and drop their spears as they try to slap the bile off of them. I use this time to leap over the scarab as it collapses. The fact that the axe is dissolving in my hand doesn't matter, as I can still use most of the blade to cleave into the head of the rightmost creature. As the head of the weapon snaps off, weakened by the bile, I just jam the shattered shaft into the throat of the middle shepherd, who's still trying to slap the bile off of its chest. The third and last was not hit with the bile, though, and lunges forward, trying to drive a spear into my chest. But the point just slides across my chest of armor. I grab the shaft of the spear then, tucking it between my ribs and arm, and jerk it forward, with the creature holding it. The grey, fleshy shepherd looks up at me in surprise, just as I tilt my head back and then smash it forward into the creature's face. It squeals and staggers back, clutching its face, as white milky blood oozes forth from the cuts I just opened along its face. I step forward then, slamming my scrotum into the creature, easily knocking it to the ground. As it looks up, it begins to raise its hands to try and defend itself. But I'm already bringing the edge of my scrotum down onto its throat. There is a distinct fleshy crunch and pop as my scrotum separates the creature's head from the rest of its body. Milky white blood splashing over my shield and my legs. I don't hear another roar, but the next threat makes its presence known rather suddenly, as I feel something yank hard on my scrotum, just as I lift it upwards and away from the dead shepherd. I grimace and gasp as it nearly feels like my left arm is being jerked out of the shoulder, but manage to get my arm out of the straps and then watch the scrotum fly across the arena, attached to the tongue of some strange massive blue and orange frog-like creature. This is another new one. It catches my scrotum in its mouth and then uses its forearms to pull it out and toss it aside. I jump back as a massive purple tongue snaps out past me and quickly form a plan as I watch the tongue snap back into the frog's mouth. Turning, I jump and stretch my arms out, barely able to grab what I want as the tongue snaps just over my head. I roll to my feet, then with one of the Northmen's shields in my hands this time, yet I only hold onto it with one strap. Just as I thought, the frog snaps its tongue out against the shield to try and jerk it free like it had with my scrotum. But I was ready for it. I drew my Pugio free from the belt then, driving it into the flesh of the tongue, gripping the shield. With the dagger piercing the long purple muscle, I let it go, and it snapped back into the frog's mouth. It howled in pain, purple blood flowing from its mouth as it spit the shield free, and then desperately tried to reach into its mouth to pull the dagger free as well. This was my chance. I ran across the arena straight for the giant thrashing frog, only slowing to lean down and yank one of the longswords free of the skeletal grasp of one of the warriors in painted armor. The creature had only just managed to spit free my dagger, with much purple blood splattered all across the dirt around it, when I was upon it. With little time for anything fancy, I just swung the sword with both my hands up over my head and down into the giant frog. To my surprise, the blade sunk clean through it, splitting the creature in two with little effort. My victory was short-lived, however, as I then was hit with the rancid and foul smell of whatever was inside the now-split creature. I stepped back, grimacing and covering my mouth with one hand, while keeping a grip on the now purple-stained blade in the other. The crowd was cheering, and I figured today's battle was done. but then they stopped cheering and started chanting. I froze as I heard the particular chant. It was not Aquila. It was not in any tongue I understood. I couldn't even repeat the sounds they made, but I knew what they were calling forth. I felt the ground rumble beneath my feet, the heavy thump louder than even the war drums that had never stopped beating. I had my own name for this creature, Pluto, god of death. It burst free from the doors near me and reared up on its back legs. It had the tusks of a war elephant, the mane of a lion, and the face of a crocodile, its claws of a wolf, and the body of a reptile covered in scales and ridges. It also was marked with scars of countless battles, much as myself. It had arrows lodged in its eyes, scar tissue all across its body and face, and one eye was glossy and white, cut in some long-forgotten battle. This was the creature that had ended the last of all the others, the monks, the Northmen, the swordsmen, and the men of feathers. It seemed the crowd might have grown tired of me and wished to pit me against the god of death to finally bring about my end. Too bad for them that I had no intention of dying this day. In fact, I had been waiting for this moment. I had watched it defeat the others and knew much of how it fought. This would be my greatest challenge, and I was prepared. I gripped the longsword in both hands, raising it defiantly towards the creature that towered over me more than twice my size. That snaggletooth snout faced me then, opening wide, as I could see blades and bones stuck in those massive jaws. It let out another mighty roar before it began to advance. I stood my ground, waiting for its first move. Sure enough, once it got close and lashed out with one massive paw, its claws extended. I had seen many men dash back only to get gouged by the quick charge of those massive tusks. So instead, I did what the creature of death did not expect. I charged. I didn't look at where my blade was, knowing through experience and practice where the long blade should be, as I ran forward and slashed, instead focusing on sliding beneath the swipe of the creature's tusks. Sure enough, I heard it howl and rear back, but as it lifted up, the creature's right paw, which had rested against the ground while it swiped with the left, was left behind. A torrent of red blood came gushing from the dismembered limb. I could not bask in this achievement, however, as I was still beneath the creature while it howled and thrashed. As its scale belly came slamming down towards me, I could only just barely leap to the side to avoid being crushed beneath it. When I tried to rise to my feet, however, it twisted and let its long tail slam into me. I was gasped in pain as I was sent flying across the arena and landed heavily, rolling several paces in my armor before coming to a stop. I groaned as the pain gripped my body. Certainly, something was wrong with my ribs, based on the sharp stabbing pain in my side when I took a breath. But I had no time to wallow in pain and agony. I pushed myself up to my feet to see the creature's blood had already stopped gushing from the wound as it was closing up so quickly. I did not focus on this. Instead, I looked around to get my bearings. There was one weapon that men with the feathers had used that I hadn't been able to use very often. There it was, the handheld ballista. Even with 3 limbs, the creature I knew as Pluto was surprisingly quick. It seemed to twist and grind its belly across the ground as the front paw and back legs would push and pull it forward. Knowing my time was limited, I ran forward and grabbed the hand ballista, turning and dropping to a knee to try and steady my shot. If ever there was a time that Mars might show me favor, now was certainly it. The creature roared and ran at me still, but I took my time, slowing my breath as best I could despite the pain. I waited for its still good eye to come to focus and I pulled the lever on the bottom of the contraption, releasing the bolt it held. The bolt flew fast and true, burying itself into the creature's remaining eye. It howled in pain, and its head jerked and twisted wildly as it thrashed around in obvious pain. Much like before, it slammed its belly and chest down on the ground, and I realized that even if it could not see me, it was still trying desperately to kill me. This was going to truly be a fight to the bitter end. I could respect that. It could not see, and I had severed one paw, but it was still more than twice my size. As it thrashed and twisted across the arena, I realized it could still easily crush me if I got lucky enough to get to where I was. I was without gladius, pilum, pugio, or scutum, but I had the final weapon. I rushed across the arena floor towards the center, but was caught by a surprise sweep of the creature's paw. I gasped in pain as it knocked me to the ground, gashes along my armor and across my right shoulder. Once more, I pushed through the pain, rising to my feet as I staggered towards the center once more. I gripped the shaft of the standard and jerked it free of the ground. Long ago, I'd sharpened the base so that I could slam it into the arena floor and leave it standing. But it was not just for show. It had another purpose. I turned the standard in my hands, the eagle at my side, and mental capped point towards Pluto. I would kill this god of death with the power of Rome itself. I waited for it to rise up and thrashed, and then charged forward, screaming with every ounce of ferocity, anger, and hatred that I had within me. Even the creature's howls paled in comparison with my war cry that filled the arena. I drove the standard's point into the creature's chest then, as it started to come down. There was another torrent of red blood that rushed from the hole in its chest that I had just opened. It gushed down upon me with the force of a spring storm. The blood came splashing down, covering my face, my armor, everywhere. I was bathed in it. My eyes were stinging as the blood ran down into them. They kept trying to come down on me even now, to crush me as I killed it, to finish us both in this moment. But I redoubled my scream, emptying every single breath I had in my lungs as I shoved up, arms and muscles burning with the strain. But as the chest of the creature came down, it slowed, then stopped. I stood beneath it screaming and straining until I could shove it up and twist it as the creature turned and collapsed on its side rather than on top of me. The crowd was silent as I stood there, looking at my standard jutting out of the creature's chest, just as covered in blood as I was. I turned and began to shove the standard up, forcing the creature from its side onto its back. Then I climbed up onto its chest and drove the standard in more fully. I stood on the belly of the beast that had ended so many, the standard of Rome proudly raised above it. For several long seconds I stood there, arena silent, except for my ragged wheezing as I tried to catch my breath despite my injured ribs. The lights lowered, and I looked up at the sky above the arena. There was the stars. There were the stars, closer and brighter than I had seen them from my home, from Rome. There was a pale blue dot I could see nearly straight up. I had no idea if it really was it, but something told me it was. Home. I used to think I'd never see it again, that from here I would simply be sent to the fields of Elysium or to Hades. Perhaps I never would. But today, I just killed their god of death. What now could they threaten me with? The chanting finally began, as their shock lightly wore off. Just one voice at first, then two, then many, then all of them. Aquila! 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 As soon as it began, I scowled. The crowd so swiftly ruined these moments for me. I did not kill for their pleasure. I killed for my survival, the glory of Rome, and to make my worth known to Mars, but not for their pleasure. I twisted a standard lodged in the chest of the creature, and then drew it free. From there, I slowly climbed down off the creature's chest, ignoring the chanting all around the arena. I found a dead ram creature from earlier, setting my sandal on its side to jerk my gladius free, which I sheathed. Then I walked across the arena to the frog creature, who still smelled just as foul now as when I'd first cut it in two. I pulled my pugia from the ground and uselessly tried to wipe the purple blood off my red blood-stained sleeve. I quickly gave up and sheathed it as well. Then I looked around and found my scutum, walking over to pick it up from where the frog had tossed it. With my weapons and shield back in my position, I began to walk towards the door that was mine, by far the smallest of all the doors into the arena. As I walked, I listened to chanting and the beat of the war drums and looked down over my blood-stained flesh and armor. I am a Praetorian. I am the glory of the empire. I am the embodiment of the Senate and the people of Rome. But perhaps I am not the son of Mars. I am coated in the blood of a god of death, am I not? Perhaps I am not his son. Perhaps I am Mars. A slow grin spreads across my face, then at the thought. The Egyptians, the Celts, the Germanic barbarians had many gods of their own, so many depicted with both human and animal traits. But I think we Romans knew best. The statues of Mars showed him for what he was, human. Well, these creatures had sent a god after a human, and it had died. I was victorious. The eagle was victorious. The chant continued all around me to amplify that fact. Aquila! 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 Perhaps this was just not about their bloodlust, their desire to watch us fight and die in the arena. Perhaps they were choosing a god. I walked back into my room, drenched in blood that trailed behind me. I turned once I was inside to sit down on my only seat. I listened to the beat of the war drum start to slow. They grew more distant as the door started to close, and the darkness began to take hold once more. Well, if they were looking for a god, they were sorely mistaken, as all they would find is me and my ego. I wonder if these creatures truly understand what they chant is their doom. For the eagle is not just about the animal, it is about flight. We do not just look at it and envy and curse the gods for not letting us have wings so that we may too fly free through the skies. No, we look at the eagle and ask, how too can I fly? And we will make it happen. We will make it happen. One day I will fly, and then they will truly be in trouble. They will discover that I do not kill for their pleasure, but so that one day I may kill them all. But now the door is nearly shut, the light was dim, and the beat of the war drums faint and slow. But even as I knew sleep would take me, I knew of what I would dream, for wings. Until I got them, I would bide my time, in darkness and sleep, or the light and battle. The chanting was little more than a whisper now, but I smiled. I was content with my plan. Just as I heard the last war drum stop, the darkness engulfed me. End of story. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Bushmaster 177, Henry the Red, Caspar Arnholtz, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Elijah Silvercross, Dragzoon WRE, and Severin Cerberus. Thank you very much.